Ford sold a lot of SN95 Mustang convertibles. It was a popular body style for cruising back roads and taking trips to the beach. Most people think a convertible Mustang isn't a good option for an autocross car, but some of the fastest autocrossers I know drive SN95 convertibles. I've autocrossed my 2000 GT convertible for years. The fact is, SN95 Mustang convertibles can be extremely capable autocross cars, and the SCCA rules make it easy to solve the problems that can come up when the top of your car can go down. This video covers the negative and positive aspects of SN95 Mustang convertibles from an autocross perspective. I'll discuss the options allowed by the SCCA rules to address the negative aspects, and I'll go over the specific chassis bracing mods I made to my 2000 GT convertible. Let's start with the negatives, and there aren't as many as you might think. The biggest issue with SN95 convertibles when it comes to autocross is chassis flex. If your chassis is flexing out on course, your steering, throttle, and braking inputs aren't as immediate, and the car isn't as composed as it needs to be. Chassis flex limits your ability to attack the cones. Ford did include some convertible-specific chassis bracing. A bolt-on X-brace that ties the K-member to the unibody, and bolt-on subframe connectors. The OEM bracing helps, but it wasn't designed with autocross in mind. Another negative is added weight. If you search for SN95 Mustang weights online, you'll find a lot of different numbers. But, on average, with the same engine, transmission, and options, 94 to 04 convertibles weigh about 155 pounds more than coupes. I haven't weighed a convertible top or all of the assorted convertible-specific parts myself, but I contacted a Mustang salvage yard that has sold and shipped convertible tops to get the weight of a 94 to 04 Mustang convertible top, including the frame and rear glass. The weight they provided was about 120 pounds. It's reasonable to assume that all the stuff it takes to make the top go up and down, the quarter glass window motors and tracks, and convertible-specific bracing would make up the 35-pound difference. So I think 120 pounds is an accurate estimate. It's safe to say that SN95 convertibles come with a weight penalty. But that's not purely a negative. That heavy convertible top moves. A convertible allows you to change the weight balance of your car. That estimated 120 pounds moves from above the shoulder line of the car and over your head to below the shoulder line of the car and over the rear axle. That's a significant amount of weight that can shift to an area where it will improve the handling of the car. That will help cars running in any SCCA category, especially categories that don't allow for weight reduction mods. Another positive is that an SN95 Mustang convertible is still an SN95 Mustang, one of the most modifiable cars ever made. The problems an SN95 convertible has from an autocross perspective have been solved by the aftermarket in many different ways. Depending on the SCCA category you run in, there are mods you can make to get your convertible chassis extremely stiff. Let's look at the authorized chassis bracing mods in the SCCA categories Mustangs commonly run in: Street, Street Touring, Street Prepared, and Classic American Muscle. I'm using the 2021 rules for this video. Street category is the entry-level autocross category. Very few mods are allowed in street category. But a roll bar can be added, and it can be bolted or welded in place. A roll cage may be added, but it must be bolted in. Adding a roll bar or a roll cage will help stiffen up your chassis. Always consult the SCCA rules for the specific requirements pertaining to roll bars and roll cages. Street category doesn't allow for aftermarket K-member braces or aftermarket subframe connectors, but the OEM chassis bracing is allowed. Street touring category authorized mods build on the street category authorized mods. Roll bars can be bolted in or welded in. A roll cage may be added, but it must be bolted in. A strut tower brace is permitted. The street touring rules state that a 2-point strut bar may be added, removed, modified, or substituted, but only with another 2-point strut bar. A triangulated 3-point strut bar may be removed, modified, or substituted. Substitution may be with either a triangulated or a 2-point strut bar. The connection to the chassis must be in the standard location. So you can substitute your OEM 3-point strut tower brace with an aftermarket strut tower brace. Lower suspension braces must be attached to the lower suspension pickup point locations on the chassis within 2 inches in any direction of the actual suspension attachment to the chassis. But the position of the OEM X brace prevents many lower suspension braces from fitting. Additional holes may be drilled for mounting bolts. Only bolt-on attachment is permitted. The street touring rules allow for bolt-on subframe connectors. Bolt-on subframe connectors won't stiffen up your chassis as much as weld-in subframe connectors, but because aftermarket bolt-on subframe connectors are beefier, they're definitely an improvement over the OEM bolt-on subframe connectors. The street touring rules for subframe connectors state that each SFC must attach at no more than 3 points on the unibody. For example, front, rear, and 1 point in between, such as a seat mount brace or rocker box brace. Bolt-on aftermarket subframe connectors that meet this requirement are available. Street prepared category rules take things a step further. Roll bars and roll cages can be welded into the car. But there are important additional requirements for roll cages. Always consult the current SCCA rules before welding anything onto your car. Street prepared update backdate rules come into play with strut tower braces. Because some 94-04 Mustangs came from the factory with 3-point strut tower braces, the street prepared rules allow you to install an aftermarket 3-point strut tower brace on any 94-04 Mustang. When it comes to subframe connectors, the street prepared rules state that SFCs must be bolted or welded, but welding must be to the OE subframe stampings, not to the floor pan in between. Classic American muscle rules allow for pretty much any chassis bracing you want, and bracing can be welded in. My 2000 GT is built to run in Cam T, but 94-04 Mustangs can run in any cam class. I've chosen not to install a roll bar or roll cage in my convertible, because I'd rather have the weight lower in the car. So what chassis bracing mods did I make to my convertible? I installed a BBK Performance 3-point strut tower brace for 96-04 V6 and GT Mustangs. It's made from heavy wall steel tubing. The BBK strut tower brace keeps the strut towers from flexing during hard cornering, which improves handling. I started out with standard subframe connectors from LMR, but I upgraded to the Stifler's fit system. The fit system's combination of subframe connectors, web braces, and jacking rails is a huge improvement over the LMR subframe connectors. In addition to significantly stiffening up the chassis, which makes every input more precise, the fit system adds 42 pounds low and in the center of the car, which is good for mass centralization. All of the components come with a durable black powder coat. Stifler's leaves the areas that require welding uncoated. Another benefit of the fit system is that it allowed me to use the Stifler's 4-point lower chassis brace. The Stifler's lower chassis brace adds rigidity, which helps improve steering response and composure when cornering and braking. And it's finished in a durable black powder coat. Stifler's doesn't recommend using their lower chassis brace on a convertible unless you're using the entire fit system. The OEM convertible X brace weighs 14 pounds. The Stifler's lower chassis brace weighs 5.5 pounds. That takes 8.5 pounds off of the car ahead of the firewall. I also installed a SCCA rear shock tower brace. It's made from very light chromoly steel. This brace does need to be welded in. There are many people out there who say a rear shock tower brace doesn't actually do anything. I've driven cars with them and without them, and I prefer to install them on my cars. You will have to cut the trunk trim panels to clear the SCCA rear shock tower brace. Together, these chassis bracing mods made my 2000 GT much stiffer than stock. It's a completely different car, and I can feel that difference in every single steering, throttle, and braking input. The car is composed and confident. The feedback is clear and the responses crisp. If you've watched my results videos, you've seen that my 2000 GT is a very competitive car at my local events. But is it as stiff as a coupe with the same amount of bracing? My 2004 V6 coupe has a SCCA strut tower brace instead of a BBK strut tower brace. Other than that, both cars use the same chassis bracing components. Both cars are IRS swapped and have very similar suspension setups. Out on course, I can definitely tell that my coupe is stiffer. But I wouldn't hesitate to build another SN95 Mustang convertible autocross car. The SCCA rules and the aftermarket make it easy to get your convertible chassis stiff enough to carve corners around cones. If you're on the fence about autocrossing your SN95 convertible, I hope this video and my results videos will inspire you to get your drop top to the top of the podium.